Andy, how you going?
Hi, good. How are you?
Great, fantastic to speak with you. Amazing film.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I've really enjoyed this trilogy. I was just talking to Jamie before, and I said to her that I'm a bit of a. I did use the word bit of a pussy. Like I'm not very good with horror or thriller or anything like that. But for some reason, Halloween films I can do, and
Really?
I think Laurie Strode's the reason because I love her. But this trilogy's just been really great. So let's start off with the biggest question to start off with off the bat. In this whole experience working on these Halloween films, what are you going to take away from it?
The experience and the relationships that I've made. The making these films, we were fortunate enough to have really the same crew. Obviously, the cast was rotating a little bit given the nature of the film where people sadly have to
Die.
exit. But the relationships that we were able to build, and it was like going to summer camp and knowing you're going to see all your friends again, and getting to create something fun and different. And each one of these films are they're very different, and
Yeah,
it's been really fun to work on because it hasn't felt like we've been doing the same thing for the last three movies. They've all been incredibly unique to their own, and really fun to make. So I think that overall it'll be when I'm looking back on it years down the road, it's going to be really the relationships and the people and those silly moments or those things that happen on set, that those memories that you kind of take with you.
definitely. And I will say that, like, I really enjoyed this one because of the story arc of it. Like, because it's the final one, they could have started it off with Michael just going postal and killing people from the opening frame for the entire thing. And I think people would have been satisfied with that as well
Hmm.
until the big climax towards the end. But you got a really nice arc in this film. So when you got the script, were you surprised about your arc in this one?
I was pitched a little bit on the story before receiving the script. So I had an
Yeah.
idea of where things were going. I didn't know much, but from what I knew, it was in line. It's always nerve wracking when you read the script for the first time because, given the nature of what this is, there are going to be people and events and stories and things that are really intense and climactic, and you don't know which direction it's going to go. And when you have writers like David Gordon Green and Paul Logan Bradley and Danny McBride, and you have all these people, you really don't know which direction you're going to go. So it was really exciting reading it. And I remember the first time I read it, it read so fast. It read so well.
Yeah.
It was something that I was incredibly excited to shoot immediately. And I think that Allison's arc is one that I'm grateful that David has allowed for a space to explore it, because I feel like we don't typically get to see the aftermath and what it's done to somebody 4 years later, and who they are all of a sudden at that point.
Well, I did like the fact that they did the time jump because obviously, if they just went like straight back into it, you would have been sitting in a corner rocking back and forth because your mum just got killed. So it would not have been a very good movie because you would have been traumatized and everyone else would have been traumatized. And
Exactly.
yeah, so the time jump worked out really well. But how do you prepare for a role like this? Like, what do you do to get into the mindset?
One of the things that was really nice about the delay with COVID delaying Halloween Kills being released, it gave us more time to sink into this and kind of work this together. So it allowed for a lot of rehearsal space as a unit and as a team with our castmates and with our director, and remotely before we got down to Savannah, and then once we were down in Savannah, which was really unique and I know doesn't happen all the time. So
Yeah.
we were quite privileged to have that opportunity. And personally for me, I just wanted to fill in the gap between, like you said, from the how do you go from rocking back and forth, being a little kooky after you've lost everything, to now where
Yeah.
you meet her 4 years later, because there's a lot that happens in that span. And so filling in that gap was important to me. So I just did a lot of journaling and kind of sinking in as the character to figure out kind of how we got from point A to point B.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. All of you have gone through some shit. Like Laurie's gone through it, you've gone through it, everyone's gone through it. So
Yes.
I'm surprised you aren't more. Well, I'm surprised you're as well adjusted as you are in the film.
I think
Yeah,
that you're we're fortunate enough. I remember Jamie has always said that, after the events of 1978, Lori Strode went to school the next day, probably. Like, no one really
Yeah.
helped her heal. And that's what created Lori Strode that you meet in 2018. And I think for this, after everything that we went through in 2018, you have more tools. There is more communication. Lori and Allyson do have each other. They're able to lean on each other. They're able to kind of force a healing process together and kind of rely on each other, as well as with Lindsay Wallace. They're able to kind of really just solidify their new little family and lean on each other. And it is obviously one of those things where, you know, she's quite well adjusted, but it's always right under the surface, which you see in this film is, especially around this time of year, it's going to be, anything can kind of trigger or set off a reminder of what happened, because that pain, that trauma that lives inside your body, that doesn't just go away, even if it seems like you're fine one day.
Exactly. Now, you've probably been asked this 1,000 times, but working with Jamie Lee Curtis, I've been a fan from her. I'm 40 years old, and she's been in my life for most of it, all of it. But what was it like working with her and as a scene partner? Like, did she give you many tips or that sort of stuff?
Jamie is an incredibly generous scene partner, and she also is incredibly respectful, and she would never overstep and make me feel like, oh, try it this way. That's not really her style. She meets you as a peer, which has been a really humbling experience. And being able to have her to work off of it makes your life a lot easier as an actor, because she's so present, she's so emotionally available, she has a depth to her that is unbelievable. And I've said it before, if I could have one scene partner for the rest of my life, it would be Jamie. She's also incredibly. There was a scene that is very emotionally difficult for Allyson, and Jamie stood right by my side as Jamie Lee Curtis, not as Lori Strode, but as Jamie, as a friend, off to the side. And the second they called cut, she came in and sat with me on the floor as I kind of cried and rocked me back and forth. She's that type of person, and that is the thing that makes her, I think, as special as she is.
Yeah, for sure. And over the last 3 films, is there a favorite memory or a scene that you got to shoot that will always stick in your mind?
So many. I think so many. It's really difficult to pinpoint. I could pick out one with each person I had the pleasure of working with on these that is iconic in its own way. One that I had so much fun filming on this last film is a dance sequence that we did. That it was one of the most fun prep that we ever had to do, and choreography and all of that. It was a blast.
Well, it looked like a fun little bar, to be honest with you. I grew up in a small country town, so seeing stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, that's me when I was growing up, basically running around in small pubs like that.
Exactly.
Now, are you a fan of this kind of genre of film, or what?
I have become one. I've definitely become one. I am too big of a scaredy cat prior to making them, to ever watch them. The ones that I've seen, a lot of the times I was watching like this through my fingers or through a blanket, or not watching at all and just listening and then covering my ears because it was too scary. But after making them and kind of being introduced to this culture of movies and the fans that surround it, that's an incredibly special community. It definitely has given me more of an appreciation and love for the genre, for sure.
For sure. Now I'm getting the wrap. So just one last question. What's next for you? Have you got anything coming up or anything that we can see you?
There are a couple cool things in the works, and one thing that I am going to be producing that I'm very excited about will go into production next summer.
Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing it. Thanks very much, Andy. Great film. I love the end of it. The whole setup towards the end was great. And yeah, I'm a little bit sad that trilogy's over.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.